What up, naughty steppers? It's Connor Whitmore again with another video on the Nawtystep channel. And in today's review, I'm going to be talking about the new EP from PhaseOne, released on Disciple Records, Double Up. Australian Graeme Duffy is renowned for his hardcore heavy metal infused take on the dubstep genre, arguably one of the most distinctive sounds in the game right now, amassing several Beatport #1s and some huge collaborations along the way from Bar 9 to 12th Planet, Virtual Riot, Barely Alive, Megalodon, Figure, Dodge and Fusky, the list goes on. Producing for some of the biggest labels in the bass game, from Bygore to Play Me to Firepower and now Disciple, with whom he signed at the beginning of last year, releasing 2 EPs in quick succession, following Origins with Dreamscape. And now we have his 3rd EP for Dodge and Myro's label, and I would say that if you are as big into his music as I am, then this is one that you've got to stick with. Because on the first couple of listens through this project, I must admit I wasn't finding too much to get excited about. But the more I listen to these tracks, the more I get out of them, which comes with being used to his style and the sounds that he uses. Moments where you're like, oh fuck yeah, that is the PhaseOne that we know and love, sort of thing. Not to say that he shouldn't progress his sound on from what we're used to, it's just always nice to see someone expand on the aesthetic that got them to where they are today. Because ultimately that is what got us into their music in the first place. For the most part, Duffy still has that momentous, seizing appeal to his metal-branded dubstep, laced with some classic PhaseOne sounds. Unsurprisingly most noticeable in his VIP of Welcome to Mayhem, which I can't say I was too excited about simply because I love the original so much and didn't see how it could be topped or developed in any way. I mean, it was my 2nd favourite single in the whole of 2017, and that sure is saying something. But I would say it is an edit that definitely has enough going for it to be a worthwhile foray into the original track. With little vocal alterations unleashing a new side to it, starting with the grunt before the double drop and the Welcome to Mayhem sample being cut off just before that release. My favourites though being in this massive heavy metal midsection where the voice of In Heart's Wake really comes to the fore. God, just so, yes, I will never not love his voice on these tracks. It just makes me want to listen to a fuckload of straight up heavy metal. I must also mention how the main sample is toyed with before the final main drop. I mean, it sounds as if he's going to say fuck, but instead it comes right back to the original Welcome to Mayhem sample, which again is cut off, another astute touch. And this VIP adopts more of a heavy metal, RIDDIM-inspired theme to ensure that the percussion rings true in the midst of the opening lead riff, which still plays a significant part. Also retaining those jagged, choppy elements underneath in the drop, but coming across as more ferocious because of the weight of what surrounds it in that booming backdrop. Becoming more RIDDIM-y as it goes from the first drop to the double drop to the 2nd main drop. Quite staggered and screechy on its final go, borrowing those low-level screeches from the double drop, it makes quite a statement by the end. Very grungy dubstep that layers sounds extremely well. I wouldn't say it gets me quite as much as the original. However, it is a good take on it, and as I said, would have had to be something utterly ridiculous and somewhat defining for that style of music in order to top it. The other track on this EP that strikes me as most noticeably PhaseOne is probably my favourite of the 5, Decimate. Luring you in with these enchanting opening notes before infecting that with some seriously earthy guitars and drums. Another taste of heavy metal mastery from PhaseOne, all these sounds come together very well, painting a genuinely scary and horrifying picture. We are then greeted by a vocal sample that says,
"And then I stopped hearing people and I started hearing growling noises."
Before a hectic build full of ticking percussion, shimmering wubs creeping in, and that heavy metal vocal. I mean, I have no idea what it's saying, but God, I love it. So grisly and twisted, and the way that the kick comes in midway through that brief sample to introduce the drop, the timing of that is spot on. But it is the dubstep that signals this most as PhaseOne's creation, putting those large squeals over pure industrial heaviness. This is the sheer power and force that I came for. In its progression adopting a more standoffish tone, and then the robotic ravenousness of the double drop, so full throttle that it seems to stumble over itself as it feasts on everything in its wake. By the end we are aware that the decimation is complete, undeniably the track where this EP explodes into life following the more underground effort State of Emergency in collaboration with Yuki, which probably has the creepiest part of this EP in its introduction, with a heartbeat, some petrified heavy breathing, a phone off hook, some haunting sounds in the background, making for an uncomfortable listen. Leading towards a rapid build of horrible screaming sounds and frantic drums before a drop that is quite simply an expected result of these two styles, with a really visceral pull to all these tears and swipes and stabs, all ricocheting off each other very well to create an all-encompassing experience. Yuki's influence being clear here in filtering PhaseOne's big sound and taking it down a subtler, less outlandish route. I'm not too big on how the dubstep proceeds from the first drop, but the wavy notes present in the double drop and the second main drop are a nice point of contrast for the rest of the heaviness in this tune. One track that hasn't held up in the first few times of listening to this EP is the opener and title track, Double Up. Here I feel like several aspects of the song are out of sync, and I feel that the track generally just doesn't really align with PhaseOne's style much at all. From the trap-led intro to dubstep that has that sweet PhaseOne jumpiness and force to it, but still just doesn't really seem like him. The synths in the first drop are a bit weak for him, the notes introducing the second are similarly lackluster, it just doesn't captivate you like his other stuff does. And this is without mentioning the vocal on this thing from Young Buck, the lyrics of which, well, let me just read some of them out to you. Push them off, break them off, you too hot inside those clothes, girl, take them off. I'm about to lose my mind. I'ma do 2 lines. I'ma pop 2 pills, hit this weed a few times. You're cool. I just cannot wait for music to get to a point where stuff like that isn't rapped about as much, you know? I think it's a fair enough request. As I said earlier, I'm all for PhaseOne pushing his sound into new territories and experimenting, but I can't say that this was a particularly good delve into new techniques. Having said that, I did enjoy the electric guitar lead in the heavy metal midsection here, and how it closes with several elements from the track being brought together. And so, ultimately, the Bandles remix of this track, to finish off the EP, comes as a bit of a saving grace for it. The track Double Up, that is, not the EP as a whole. With some really juicy robotic sounds going on here, pummeling their way through, with each note having a big say in these drop sequences. I also like the rewind sounds here, the vocal samples being cut off. There's a striking dynamic between everything going on. Simple as an idea, but sells itself through its noises and effects and their relationship, whilst clearly borrowing from the original in parts. But overall, I feel like Double Up is another example of me loving several tracks from a PhaseOne EP, but not the project in its entirety. There are moments where he taps into the brilliance he is capable of, and others where I feel he just lets his sound down a little. Therefore, that sense of the epic that he can create with his music becomes slightly lost, but only slightly, within the context of this EP as a whole. However, the fact that it starts with, in my opinion, the weakest track, means that it picks up significantly over time. Maybe this was his intention with the 5 tracks, in terms of heaviness at least. Taking into account, of course, that any remix is going to be drastically different from everything that precedes it, something Bandles does a very good job of, I must say. Moreover, I think there are staple PhaseOne elements to every track, and in all honesty, to many that would be all that one could ask for. He captures the style that made him so popular, whilst dipping into newer techniques every now and then, which I can't say I'm too much of a fan of in this EP, but that's only going to improve over time as he experiments more and more. The vintage, atmospheric, cacophonous feel is still there, that which makes his sound so unique, and that alone makes this a good EP in my opinion. And he remains mile and away my favourite artist when it comes to bringing together heavy metal and dubstep. For me, absolutely no one matches him in that regard. Which I must say owes a lot to his drums, which as usual are so on point and distinctive, also varied and coming together so well in basically every instance. Gripping stuff. And in terms of a favourite, whilst I wouldn't say any of PhaseOne's 4 tracks here are up with his very best, Decimate is still a fantastic song. The best representation of his style in this EP, with heavy metal elements, varied dubstep, haunting vocal samples. It's got a lot going for it. And in terms of recommendations, if you enjoyed this EP, whilst as I said there isn't anyone that sounds quite like PhaseOne, there are still a multitude of artists trying to bring together heavy metal and bass music, including Dirty Phonics, Sullivan King and Riot 10, to name but a few. And so that is that for another review on the Nawtystep channel, this time of PhaseOne's new EP released on Disciple Records, Double Up. Thank you very much, and as always, for tuning in. Be sure to leave a comment with your thoughts on Double Up. What did you guys make of it? Which track was your favourite? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, then be sure to give it a big old thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, hitting that notification bell along the way so you can be notified whenever I upload to the Nawtystep channel. Next to my head there should be some other Disciple reviews on the Nawtystep channel, so if you enjoyed this one then be sure to check those out. And don't forget to like and follow Nawtystep across all social media if you haven't already. With everything linked, including those recommendations, in the description box down below. And on that note, if anyone has any other crossover artists between heavy metal and bass music that they would like to suggest for the Nawtystep community, then please comment with those too. And lastly, if it's naughty, then you know guys, so be sure, as always, to keep it naughty and stay safe. And I shall see you all in the next one. Peace out.